Welcome, one and all, to the mystical world of Filbar. Adventures abound throughout this realm, and we appreciate the opportunity to regale you with some stories from these trails. These accounts are all based on actual RPG experiences that occurred within Adventures in Filbar. Some of these tales may be for mature audiences, while others may be for very immature audiences. We now present the sage Mikas Tumo from Tamel, also known as the Bard of Filbar.
Welcome to session Fartook-110. Our last episode featured the rest of the group being made aware of the missive from the High Bishop. A discussion ensued, but Cabe Silvertongue's address made sense to most of the party. In the end, they opted to continue with the plan despite the dire warning from the head of the church. The party had opted to head back to Haddonfield and find a vessel to return them to Phoenix. We rejoin the party as they pack up their tent and obtain some food supplies from the celebration participants. Well, those folks say we are a day away from Haddonfield, but they live west of here, reported Lady Irena. She had obtained some food for traveling and felt the information was solid. As Bulger stomped back towards the encampment, he was discussing something with an armored knight. As the pair approached, they shook hands and parted ways. The former sailor stood with the mounts as his associates finished packing up the tent and their belongings, and noted that the bard was lovingly stroking his trophy. Fargus Stoutheart finished folding the tent and addressed the gnome, pointing out that what they had discovered that they were only a day away from the destination. Bulger shook his head negatively, causing silence to fall over the group. Waiting patiently, the adventurers waited to see what the former sailor had to say. Seeing their patience wear thin, a look of disappointment crossed the demi-human's face. "Well," began Bulger, "on any map, we're only 1 day away from the city. However, according to that young lieutenant I was speaking to, Haddonfield is a day and a half from here. Apparently there are some small mountains on the other side of Debut Woods, which is haunted, of course. The suit says we're to get through the woods before nightfall and catch the campsite they used tucked just inside the mountain. He says it is easy to find and well-worn trails lead through the woods." Sister Elaine asked if the one-day travel to the mountains took into account that the military would probably leave at first light. Bulger nodded, confirming her guess, and the group pointed out that they had already lost time in that regard. Opinions were given on the prospect of waiting versus moving forward, and the group decided that they were packed. Fargus Stoutheart also pointed out that he had his doubts of any hauntings, noting that military men were probably used to seeing things leap from the trees at them. Moving their horses to the gate, the group was stopped by some of the knights and joined shortly thereafter by Lord Nacco. He wished the group good luck and offered a small leather pouch to Sister Elaine. As he turned it over, he pointed out that she hoped she would not have need for them, but just in case. A quick look inside revealed a trio of tubes containing healing elixirs. Thanking the elder knight, the group passed through the gate and headed east. The sun reached its zenith just as the party crossed the grasslands. Looking into the dark woods, the party understood why the military considered it haunted. It just appeared that way. A worn trail leading into the forest shied away from the coastline, and Bulger was questioned but could not give an answer as to why. He did point out that coastlines tended to be irregular, and he assumed the military had determined the fastest way through the woods. Looking at each other, it was Lady Irena that finally broke the silence as she snickered and her mount moved forward along the path. The others filed in behind her and quickly noticed the darkness consumed the forest just a few yards into Debut Woods. The Delvers marveled at the wide berth created by the military, but could still hear furtive movements beyond the road. 2 hours into their journey, the party began to lose track of time and distance, which was quite disconcerting to all of them. As the noises grew in intensity, the party became more worried, wondering if they were headed into an ambush. Sister Elaine queried Bulger if the woods were known to house bandits, but the former sailor stated that there were no reports of humans present in the woods from the lieutenant. The narrow beams of light began to fade from the canopy, and the sounds in the woods quit entirely, causing an eerie silence to descend in the forest. As the group trudged forward, they located signs of an old camp, used by possibly merchants. The intermittent light had stopped, and the group surmised that it must be close to nightfall. There is no way to determine how far we've traveled unless one of us wants to climb a tree and look around. No one seemed to care for that idea, and it was decided that they would take a break for the night against the better judgment of the military. Cabe and Fargus stood watch as Sister Elaine, Lady Irena, and Bulger all assembled a tent. Once completed, the group marveled at their invisible shelter as it blended in seamlessly with the surroundings. A discussion broke out about keeping watch, and it was decided that a sentry would be posted at the tent opening only. The reasoning that if undead did roam the woods, then a single sentry should be good enough. Bulger took first watch with Lady Irena and Cabe Silvertongue following. The group ate some of their supplies and bedded down for the night, but a short time later, Cabe Silvertongue awoke to the snapping of fingers. Roused by the noise, he immediately grabbed his weapons and moved to the front of the tent where Bulger was peering out into the darkness. Peeking out over the shorter gnome, Cabe noticed a globe of light bouncing through the open campsite. Bulger began to speak, but the half-elf quickly clasped his hands over the man's mouth. For several minutes, the pair watched the illumination dart through the area until it receded back into the woods. The two relaxed a bit, and the gnome inquired as to what they had just seen. Cabe pointed out that the intruder was called a will-o'-the-wisp, and was a form of undead. Clearly confused, Bulger was told that the creature was designed to lure unsuspecting victims into the woods or a swamp to study the strange nature. Once apart from its safe area, it would attack the wayward soul with lightning and absorb their light force. The look on the former sailor was complete shock, and asked if Cabe was pulling his leg. The half-elf's look was so condemning that Bulger's swallowing could be heard audibly as he held his neck. Cabe offered to take over the watch, but the gnome pointed out that he would not be sleeping for a while. The pair stood at the entrance together for several more hours, until Cabe woke up Lady Irena for relief, as the two had become quite exhausted. The next morning, Sister Elaine awoke to find the elven mage staring outside the tent. She inquired if there were any problems, but Lady Irena informed her that a group of skeletons had clacked by an hour ago, but since then nothing. "Skeletons?" inquired the cleric. After receiving a nod of acknowledgement from the female, the rest of the group were roused from their slumber, and they packed up their campsite.
We close out this episode now and give you our thanks for listening. Please subscribe to this podcast, and don't forget to follow us on Twitter at The Bards Podcast. For everyone in Adventures of Filbar, thanks for listening.